Hey everyone, my name is John. I'm here with Boardroom Gaming. We're going to be taking a look at a game called Quantum today. This was designed by Eric Zimmerman and published by Funforge. It's a game for 2 to 4 players, plays in about 60 minutes. The goal is to take your fleet of ships, which in this case are dice, and you're going to move them around the board, trying to take over planets by placing your quantum cube on them to claim them. The goal is to place all of your quantum cubes on the board, and the first player who can do that wins. So let's head over to the table. We'll take a look at the setup, we'll look at the gameplay, and then we'll do a quick recap at the end. Alright, so let's go through the rest of this setup for a 2-player game. I've already got the basic map set up here, and I've already picked my command sheet. With this sheet, I'm going to get 5 of the quantum cubes. There's 7 of each color in the bag. You only need 5 of them. The other 2 are for more advanced games. So we'll place them here in our quantum cube section. Get the 7 dice, right? So there's all 7. One's going to go in your dominant section here, and you're going to put it on 1. Another one's going to go on your research spot on 1. 3 of them you're going to roll, and these will be your starting ships. That was a 3. If you don't like your starting ships, you can re-roll them, but you have to keep whatever that result is. I'm going to keep these. These are fine. And I just place them here on the sheet with the description. You don't have to. You can keep them anywhere you want to. This just helps me personally. The other 2 go off to the side. You won't be needing them right away. The next section, each player is going to pick their starting point, and this changes based on the number of players. So this is our 2-player map. So our starting points are going to be this bottom corner here and this upper corner here. So I'll place my starting cube down here, and then the opponent, whoever you're playing against, would go over here in those little center squares in each planet. For 3 players, there's going to be 3 starting spaces like they're shown on this board, and you would get the top left section, the top right section, and the bottom middle. And for 4 players, along with the change in the numbers on the tiles, you'll have 1 player in each of the 4 corners, as you can see here. Next up, we'll pull out the 2 combat dice. Those are just going to go down here for when we need them. And then the next step is going to be flipping over our cards here. So we've got our command cards. Flip over 3 of those. And then we've got our Gambit cards. We'll flip over 3 of those. And these are cards that you'll be able to get throughout the game that give you some different benefits. So this is the set for 2 players. Let's take a closer look at the player board, and then we'll get into how each of these ships works and the objective of the game. So the first thing we'll look at on our command sheet is the dominant space up here in the top left corner. So we start the game with our dice at 1 on this space, and as you can see, anytime you destroy a ship, you're going to increase your dice by 1. Anytime one of your ships is destroyed, you're going to decrease it by 1. And then when you hit 6, infamy, it just says that you're going to place one of your quantum cubes anywhere you want to on the board, as long as it's not already claimed, and then you'll reset your dice back to 1. Next up, let's talk about research over here in the right-hand corner. Similar to dominance, this one starts as a 1 on our dice. One of the actions you can take on your turn is to perform research, which allows you to take your dice up 1 spot each time. Once you hit 6, you have a breakthrough, which lets you choose one of the advanced cards that we flipped over during setup. The last 2 sections across the top were for quantum cubes and the scrapyard. The quantum cubes block is where you're going to put any quantum cubes you haven't placed out on the board yet, and the scrapyard is where all of your destroyed dice are going to go after you re-roll them. The middle section explains each ship's ability and how they work. I'm not going to go over them here. I'm going to show them to you on the board when we get back to the table. And the bottom section goes through the turn sequence of what you can do, which I'm also going to go over when we get back over to the table. So now that we've gone over a quick overview of the command sheet here, we're going to finish setting up our game to get started. You can see we've already placed our opponent's starting dice. We're going to go ahead and play ours. They need to go in a space adjacent to our starting planet here. So that's these 4 squares next to it. So we're going to go ahead and place them here, here, and here. And now we're ready to start. So each turn is based off of 2 different phases. There's the actions you're going to take, which is the top portion of your card that we discussed before, and then the bottom is checking for any advancement cards you may be able to draw. In this, you're only going to be drawing cards if you've built a quantum cube on one of these planets, or if you've had your research breakthrough. So this research die gets to 6. You would pick one of the cards out here, and then you would start all over again at 1. So let's talk about the actions that you can take. So you can reconfigure your ships. So you're going to pick up one of your ships, re-roll it. If you get the same number, you would roll it again, and then you're going to place it back on the board. So that would be one action. The second one you can take is to deploy. So if you have a ship that's destroyed here in your scrapyard, you're going to take it out of the scrapyard and you're going to place it in a starting position by a planet that contains one of your quantum cubes. There's moving or attacking. This is where you're going to move your ship, and if you land on the same space as one of your enemies, you would attack them. And you would move your dice based on the number of pips shown on the dice. So 1 would move 1 space, 6 can move up to 6 spaces, so on and so forth. You can construct a cube. This uses 2 actions. So if you're in these 4 spaces around a planet, you don't have to take up all 4, but if the dice you have in these spaces adds up to 7, you would construct one of your quantum cubes on that planet in order to gain control of it. And that's kind of the goal of the game, right? You're trying to build all of your quantum cubes on the planets around the board. So you would need your dice position to add up to 7. So you could have a 6 and a 1. If my dice were here like this, I could use 2 of my actions. Constructing a cube uses 2 actions. So you would construct your cube here, and now this is your planet. And you can see there's only 1 spot there, so only 1 player can own that at a time. This middle one here, the 8, there's 2 squares here. So there's the option there where 1 player could have each cube, or if there's no other choices to make on the board, 1 player could actually contain both of those cubes. It just depends on how the game plays out. So that's another action. That would be building a cube, and it needs to equal the exact number that's shown on the planet. And then there's researching, which is simply ticking your dice up 1 on the research side. And again, when this reaches 6, after you've taken your 3 actions, you would check to see if you're able to get that advancement card. If you do get to an advancement card, you've got your choice out of both sides. The white cards here, the command cards, are kind of like, I guess you could say, enhancements to your board. So you'd pick one of these cards and you would read its effect. This one says, each of your ships diagonally adjacent to a planet may be counted toward the construction costs. So this card, Ingenious, means you don't necessarily have to be in these 4 corners. You could be in the diagonal spots and it would count towards building this planet. If you were to choose this card, there's little spaces over here on your board. You'd slide it right underneath. And now you'd be able to use that ability throughout the game. And then you'd reveal the next card. The Gambit cards, or these darker cards, are typically one-time use cards. So if we were to take this one, the expansion, it says add a ship to your fleet. So this is how you get those 2 ships that aren't part of your fleet now. You would essentially draw this card, and it says to immediately roll an expansion ship and put it in orbital position on a planet with one of your quantum cubes or in your scrapyard. So you would take one of your dice that you don't currently have control of, you would roll it, and then you could either put it in the scrapyard, or orbital position are the 4 that had the blue square in it. That's considered orbital position. So you'd be able to place it on the board or in your scrapyard to later deploy on another turn. So that's how these cards work, and you'd be able to gain them throughout the game. There's different effects that they have. Some are better than others, obviously. But overall, it's good to try to get some of these enhancements added on because it'll give you a better chance of winning the game. Alright, so let's go through how these ships work so that you know how to best utilize them to place your cubes and move around the board. So we'll start with the first one, the battle station. So this one lets you attack one enemy that's next to the battle station. So this refers to the adjacent spaces. So if you think of how the moving and attacking action works, you have to be able to move into the space of an enemy in order to attack them. With this dice, all you have to do is be adjacent to them. So if I were to use this dice as move action, I can move him here and then use the ship's action to attack the 3. In combat, it's a little different here. So the attacker would get the black dice and he would roll it. and the defender gets the white dice, and they would roll it. And then you're going to add your two numbers together. So 1 and 1 is 2, and 4 and 3 is 7. And in Quantum, the lowest number is considered the winner. So in this case, the attacker would have won. The defender, since they lost, would end up taking their ship off of that space and moving them into the scrapyard, and they'd be able to redeploy them on their next turn. If the defender won, if the defender had the lower number, all the attacker has to do is move back to his previous space. So in this case, the 1 would stay here, but if I were attacking it, I would go back to my previous space. So that's the battle station. This actually gives you a chance to attack twice per turn. So if this is how the turn started and I moved in and attacked and I lost, I would go back to my starting space, and then I could use his ability to attack this again, trying to get him off that space. For the 2, the transport, they can pick up a surrounding ship. So again, it has to be adjacent. So he could be here, and let's take the 1 and we'll place him here. So the transport allows you to pick up a ship, carry it while it moves, and then drop it off in adjacent space. So we would pick it up, and then if you moved him 2 spaces, you would go 1, 2, and then you could drop him off in either this space or this space. That's how transporting works. 3, the warp ability. If this were, let's change you to a 3. So if this were a 3, warp just lets you trade places on the board. So I would take the 6 from here and the 3 from here, and I would just swap them. And that's how warp works. Modify, so if we had a 4 up here somewhere, where are you at? 4. 4 just lets you change to a 3 or a 5. So it's pretty straightforward. Go to 5 or go to 3. So that doesn't mean you would be able to use that 3 or 5's action. So you couldn't warp, and you couldn't use the maneuver action right after changing. Going from the 4 to the 3 or the 5 would be considered that dice's action, and you wouldn't be able to perform another one until your next turn. 5, maneuver lets you travel diagonally. So instead of moving into adjacent spaces, this dice can actually go diagonal across the board. So you'll be able to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then 6, if you had a 6, the free ability on this one just lets you re-roll to a new number. So you would roll it. If you rolled a 6, you could roll it again. And then now you would end up with a 4 instead of a 6, which will let you move about the board differently. So the goal for this whole game is to get all of your quantum cubes built. So you need to be able to be stationed around the planet. So you can have a 1, a 4, and let's say a 2. And that would give you your 7. You would use your 2 actions to construct a cube. And now you have control over this planet. The first person to get through all of their quantum cubes is the winner. So that's Quantum. We really like this game. We play it a lot. This one comes out to our table very often. We really like it because of the space theming, for one. We like the big chunky neon dice that go along with that space theming, the modular board. It's made out of some nice, really thick cardboard, so you don't have to worry about damaging it or anything. And along with those modular pieces, the board itself completely changes each game if you want it to. There's some instructions on making different types of boards, or there's guidelines if you just want to make your own. So you can literally play a different game every time you pull this out, and it can change based on the number of players. The play time, I think, is a little longer than what we actually experienced. I don't know that it takes us an hour to play through this. I feel like it might be closer to the 45-minute mark, but I could be wrong. Overall, it's just a really good game. This is actually the only space-themed game that we have, which I thought was interesting. I looked through the collection behind me, and I didn't see anything that jumped out as space-themed. So it makes me wonder if maybe that's just a gap in our collection, which leaves me with the question of, is there a space-themed game that you think we should check out that would be a lot of fun to play? Let me know in the comments below. Like I said, this is the only one that I found in our collection that lends itself to that space theme. We have sci-fi. Got a lot of sci-fi games back there, but nothing strictly to do with space. So let me know in the comments below if there's something we should check out. And until next time, happy gaming.